Corey Salinas.
Corey Salinas.
Salinas. So it's like Selena apostrophe S, and became Salinas. So it's Hispanic. But yeah, it means saltworks, which is super cool. And an even cooler story behind that is that Salinas is not my blood name. That's not a family name at all. It was kind of an accident. Both my parents, I would say, are first generation believers. And my dad's Irish, my mom's Mexican. My dad's dad was abandoned when he was a kid, like just left on the street. And a Mexican family found him and took him in, and they weren't legal citizens, so they couldn't adopt him. But when my grandfather was old enough, and by the time he was having his own kids, he put the family's last name on his kids' birth certificates. We're the salt of the earth. What it was meant to be is like a preservation and like a flavor enhancer. You know, so you're somebody who just goes in and you enhance the flavor, so to speak, and I guess how that would apply is like a person-to-person interaction. You're an influencer, you're a culture shaper, and you affect the area around you. At least for me, when I try to be salty to people, I try to influence people for the better, not changing them in any way, but just helping bring out the best of who they already are. I've lived in Los Angeles for a little over 2 years. I moved here January 2016. I moved just on faith that God was calling me to be here. Not really to pursue anything, but just this is where he wanted me. This is where he wanted to kind of plant me and grow me in different ways. It really shot me deeper into just the supernatural aspect of God and understanding his spirit and the prophetic and things like that. I'm an artist. It's heavily affected that. I sketch and I paint. I want to be a tattoo artist. I'd love to have my own shop, but I also want my own gallery too. And I've prayed and talked to God about even making graphic novels, because I like telling stories too.
What kind of tattoos do you have? What are they? Introduce us.
So my fingers are 70 times 7.
I love that.
Which is comes from the book of Matthew. It's when Peter is talking to Jesus. He's kind of complaining to Jesus about John, and just telling him like, I'm just so tired of John. Like he's always annoying me, like doing these things, and I've forgiven him time and time again for all these things. He says, I forgave him like 7 times for this one thing. And Jesus is like, you forgive 70 times 7 times. And he was just kind of setting that standard of like, it doesn't matter. Like, I understand where you're coming from, but he's your brother, you love him, so you just keep forgiving him, because that's the standard. Love doesn't have a ceiling, you know what I mean? And then this is Yahweh, YHWH. Which is Hebrew for God. This was a prophetic word that I got 2015, the same time that I felt the Lord pressing my heart to move here. And I'd never experienced prophetic in my life before this. So it was pretty moving and overwhelming. But basically, the speaker, Luke Holter, I don't know if anybody's familiar, he comes from Expression 58. But I met him in Texas, and he gave me this word about like God sees me like a bear, like brother bear, and he sees me as like an oak of righteousness, and all of these other things, and it was just super cool. And so I sketched it out, and I got it tattooed, and I didn't recognize until everybody keeps telling me like, oh, I thought it was a California tattoo, and this was like 9 months before I moved to California. So it was almost like, it was super cool that the tattoo continued to be prophetic. Like God knew it was going to take me here. This is a mistake, and so
we don't talk about the mistake.
I don't mind talking about it. I just wish it looked better than it did.
What is it? This beautiful mistake.
It is a beautiful mistake, because this was the month that I found Jesus.
Wow.
When I was 19, and I got this in the middle of the night with 3 of my friends. we got really stoned and really drunk, and we wanted to go get tattoos. And I think I was sober, but so I was driving my friend's car, and so we're like, let's just drive into the city. I lived in Chicago at the time, and we're like, let's just drive into the city and see if we can find a shop that's open. And it's like, by this time, it's about 3 a.m. And it was snowing, and we spin out and run into like a guardrail off of an off-ramp from the freeway. And we spin out and slam into it hard, and the car is like completely totaled, and I'm sitting there, airbags are like deployed, and I'm like, oh my god, I can't, what happened? And I look at my friend Isaiah, I'm like, are you okay? He's like, yeah, I'm fine. And then my friend Jordan in the back seat, he's like, I don't think we're okay, you guys. And like, we turn around, and our friend Kristen is unconscious in his lap with blood rushing down her skull, and I'm like in a panic. Eventually ambulance comes and tow truck comes, and like we're on the side of the road in the middle of the night or early morning in the freezing snow in Chinatown in Chicago, smoking, like panicking, and our friend is being carried off into an ambulance, and they won't tell us which hospital they're taking her to, and we don't have that much money, and they tow our car away because it's not even my car, it was her car. And they just leave us there, and now it's just like me and my two friends, and we're just stuck in Chinatown in Chicago. And we get on the subway just to stay warm because we didn't know what else to do. And then we decide, like, do you guys still want to get tattoos? So we spend all day looking for a tattoo parlor, and we get these dumb tattoos, and it's basically it's a good picture of the state my life was in when Jesus found me that later that month.
Wow.
And he basically found me also really high and really wasted, and cops knocking on the door, and I opened the door, and I was a grower, and I had all of my plants that I was growing just right behind me, and all this smoke pouring out, and I'm ready to be in handcuffs, and I'm like terrified because I knew I just ruined my life. And the only thing I remember them saying is, we're gonna let you off the warning, keep it down next time. And then they just close the door and they leave. That was the first time that I felt and recognized the presence of God come over me, and he said, this is a warning, because I have so much better for you than this. And I was just so wrecked.
What would be your legacy that you want to be known for?
Wisdom.
Wisdom, okay.
I've prayed heavily about that.